Black women are increasingly putting themselves first, dropping the label of strong Black woman in favor of the soft life.
So what does all of this mean for those who have come of age in the era of Me Too? I sat down with a group of Gen Zennials to get their take on all of this. So by a show of hands, who here feels that women are more empowered to speak up about sexual assault today than they were before Me Too became mainstream? And to the second point about Black women, do you feel like Me Too empowered Black women specifically to speak up? So where's the disconnect? What happened?
I think a large part, at least in my experience, there's a lot of victim blaming still. I think for folks who are typically white women, who are thin, individuals who are cisgender, when they speak up about these things, they're believed. But when Black women speak up, you're immediately considered, well, what did you do? How did you get in that situation? You're held insults, you're called a slut, or there's all these other pieces. So even though it's maybe more available for women to speak up, Black women have always been forced to exist outside of what it means to be a woman by being Black and a woman. And I just feel like that moment, and I think for me too, for myself, when I learned that Tarana Burke had created Me Too, it definitely softened how I felt about it.
More people are coming up to speak about their experiences, but now it's like, okay, society is kind of choosing who to believe and what pieces of your story they want to believe. Yeah. They kind of like bully you into making you feel like you shouldn't have spoken in the first place. And that's a lot of, especially in social media. For example, Megan, when she came out, she went through a whole lot coming from Black women, white women, Black men, white men, everybody in general.
And when the court case came, I'm like, Tori, you won this, bro. Meg Thee Stallion all over the place. She lying on Gayle King.
They found the innocent man guilty because they didn't want the public outcry that was to come if they found him innocent.
They made her feel like she took too long, or the fact that she was actually not too hurt, because as a Black woman, in order for people to believe you, you have to be completely at your lowest for them to believe you. You can't be okay with whatever happens to you and expect people to feel like you were hurt at the same time.
Do you guys know who Angela Davis is?
Mm-hmm.
Of course. Do we know?
Mother.
The doctor.
Just checking, Kim, don't make any assumptions. So we have a soundbite from her about Black women that I would love to get your reaction to.
Activist Tarana Burke, who gave the movement its name, of course says that concrete change has been incremental in terms of Black women in the movement. Why do you think Black women have been left behind, or in what ways do you feel like they have been left behind with these larger social movements?
Black women have always been key to radical conceptions of social justice.
Absolutely.
Black women never struggle only for themselves. They always struggle, and sometimes at the expense of leaving themselves behind, for the family, for the community.
Right.
And this is an important era for young Black women, because they're recognizing now that they do not have to leave themselves behind.
Yeah.
They can write themselves into the narrative.
Black women have been so strong, too strong, that to the point where they stand out and say, okay, well, it's time for me to take a break. People are like, wait, you're supposed to be strong. You're supposed to be doing all of this and all of that. Like, you can't take a break, because we're always the one up front doing what has to be done. And when it's time for us to say that we're tired and we need a break, it's like, what? You don't get a break. You get to work.
What's your reaction?
The pillar of the family, the backbone of everything. And we're tired. I want to do all these things for everybody else and forgot to take care of myself.
You're talking about the idea of putting me first, which is something that we spoke to Tarana Burke about, and we have not necessarily seen that with previous generations. They were, in terms of activism, Black women, they're putting everybody else first. What do you think you've seen from previous generations that have brought you to this point, which we're hearing a lot? It seems there's a shift of saying, no, I'm going to take care of me first. I'm going to rest. I'm going to find my joy. And these are all part of radical action.
I don't know if I've seen it from previous generations, but I've seen it from Gen Z. Right, as much as I roll my eyes at Gen Z, they're like, days off, self-care, me time, and I'm like, you're absolutely correct. So I don't really know if previous generations really understood or showed us self-care and balance, right? Getting your hair done on Fridays was self-care, but is that really, that's maintenance? That's not really self-care, right? Getting your nails done is maintenance.
Yeah. So how did you get to that point? And for you, it's been kind of an evolution, because you know what life is like where you don't give yourself permission to rest and take care of yourself the way you need to. And it sounds like you've kind of evolved to a place where now you've embraced that. But you also got there, your starting point may have been a little bit different. How do you get to the point, how have you gotten to the point where you allowed that? What brought you to that point?
Oh, honestly, health. And last night I spent the evening with Shonda Rhimes, and she told me she gets 8 hours of sleep every evening. And I said, wow, if she can get 8 hours of sleep, so can I, right? So I've got to make better use of my daytime. But I need sleep and also my health. Like I'm struggling right now. I was telling them earlier, I have fibroids, Black woman problems, right? And I'm just like, take a break. Nobody's gonna die. Like the computer, your team is pretty efficient, right? You wouldn't have hired them, trust them. And just take a moment to unplug and everything will be okay.
I work full time. I teach poetry every day in the South Bronx, so I leave my house at like 7 a.m. I'm in grad school, I freelance, I consult, like I'm getting there, I'm trying to. I think also just like with the realities of like, I make less than my peers. Like the thought of like what it means to take a break like freaks me out because I don't have the same social supports and networks. So it means like if I crash, I gotta get me up.
What do you make of the idea that for the two of us, that sounds incredibly revolutionary and also really refreshing and like, why didn't I ever think of that? Like when you're tired, rest. Like that is not something that we grew up with.
Black women have led to the point of their own destruction, and it's something that it saddens me deeply because as much as we were at the forefront of a lot of the movements, like we aren't who's always centered. And now Black women are saying, well, what about us? Like we lift everybody up. And you know, the idea was that like if Black men get their liberation, then we're next. And that wasn't how it planned out. But then we said, okay, well, if it's just us and we have each other, then we'll support each other and we'll make sure that we are good. And so I love that that's been happening. Also, if you are in a space right now where you feel like you need to take a break, that is your body telling you to take one. And sometimes it's hard to fight the guilt of it. What I've learned is like it is revolutionary and it's necessary.
I didn't get that in my 20s at all. Yeah. I was waiting for my job to love me back. And it took me a while to learn that my job was never gonna love me back. And that's not where you should be seeking love. You can seek a lot of things from work, but you know, love comes from other things. And I love that you guys get that. I love that. So thank you for teaching us.